Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, let's take a look at the economy and energy, but first, it's election time. We'll get to those subjects after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, we have two journalists joining me today, Marc Levy with the Associated Press and Angela Couloumbis with the Philadelphia Inquirer and Spotlight, PA. All right, Angela, I'll tell you what, November 2, we have Election Day, municipal elections. The ballot is about 10 feet long. I'm exaggerating, but all of these offices, right, and many of them, the folks just don't, right, I can't even read them off without having them in front of me, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't really, the bunching of them doesn't really make a lot of sense. But at the top of the ticket, we have the race for the state Supreme Court, where there's one opening. And also, we also have openings for the other two appellate courts, right, Commonwealth and Superior. And then we have a whole slew of county races, and then we have local school board races. Both at the top and at the bottom of the ticket, we have, a lot of divisiveness this year as well, because at the top of the ticket, the two candidates, Kevin Brobson and Maria McLaughlin, have been going into each other on ads on television. And at the bottom, where you have school boards, those have become really divisive races where big national issues like universal masking and mask mandates and critical race theory are suddenly becoming local issues.
And
go ahead, Marc.
But the bigger effect of those issues at the school board level is that Republicans are hoping that anger they've whipped up over, say, critical race theory or mask mandates will play out at the top of the ticket, so that their voters will come out for the school board races, but also vote Republican in the top of the ticket race for state Supreme Court. So not only in Pennsylvania, but nationally, Republicans are hoping that.
No, you're right. There's a whole theme going on about what's generally referred to as the nationalization of, I'll put it this way, local politics and, and local offices, correct?
That's right. That's right. And I mean, you know better than anybody, this is generally a very low turnout election, maybe not even 20% of registered voters, but so we'll see what effect maybe the anger over school boards has on overall turnout.
Yeah, we could have a higher turnout. I mean, as you point out, it can be under 20. It's sometimes between 20 and 30%, but it's never higher. Maybe you get a real big controversy with some candidates and some issues, but over 30%, that's rare.
Right, and in the big cities, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, there's no hot-button race this year that's bringing voters to the ballot.
All right, well, let's turn to the Supreme Court race. I mean, it's perhaps the most high-profile race on the ballot. You know, maybe again, except for some school board and other races that have gotten controversial. But you've written about who is financing it. One of you go.
Yes, it's an expensive race this year. Over $5 million has been raised between the two candidates. If you look at the top donors on the Democratic side, you have trial lawyers, you have unions being among the top donors. On the Republican side, it is basically one single source group that has provided the majority of Kevin Brobson's contributions, and it's a group that's has ties to school choice issues in Pennsylvania, and but between the two of them, they've both raised, and this, we won't know really until the end of maybe Election Day. We won't know exactly how much, but they've both raised almost $3 million as of last week, and that's a significant amount of money.
And as you point out, they're getting a lot of money from outside sources that are running these commercials. In theory, in fact, they're not supposed, under the canon of ethics, when you're running for judge, you're not supposed to talk about issues that might come before the court. You're supposed to be very careful in the rhetoric that you use. So normally it's just about what experience do you have, what education do you have, as opposed to talking about specific issues.
Right. What sort of decisions you've made. But in what we're seeing in the ads, which are very, very hard-hitting and very extremely lacking in context, and I know we're writing about them to try to help voters understand what they're being told. But yeah, some of the ads out there are from third-party groups. So you have the Democratic Party has an ad out, the Republican Party or the Republican State Legislative Conference has an ad out. The group that Angela mentioned, which gets its money from a suburban Philadelphia billionaire,
and they can pretty much run whatever. They're not bound by the canon of ethics, right? They can.
Right, they're called more like independent expenditures. They can put an ad out on an issue that they know is going to trigger, Republicans or Democrats to come out en masse.
All right, the Attorney General Josh Shapiro and the Governor Tom Wolf agree on a lot of things, but there's one big issue they don't agree on, and we'll talk about that issue, I should say, after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
The Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, is also running for governor. And when you talk about issues, he and Governor Wolf essentially agree on many of them, but they don't agree on Governor Wolf's climate change strategy. Take it.
So the governor, the centerpiece of his climate change strategy is to impose carbon pricing, a price on power plants to emit carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas and contributes to global warming. He has been working on this for 2 years. He expects that it'll take effect next year once it goes through the final steps of the regulatory process. Josh Shapiro, however, the Democrat who's endorsed by Governor Wolf, who is running for governor and is expected to be the party's nominee, came out yesterday and said he doesn't support it. He said it's not clear to him that it accomplishes climate goals. It's not clear to him that it protects jobs, and it's not clear to him that it protects the state's power industry. And so that dropped like a bomb for the environmental groups that support the governor's strategy on this.
Yeah, and I'm not taking a stance on the issue, which I don't do, but Pennsylvania is a big energy state.
It's a big energy state, and the governor's plan has come under severe criticism by the coal industry, elements of the natural gas industry, and Republicans, but also the labor unions who work on power plants, who work on pipelines, who work on refineries. They almost always endorse the Democratic candidate for governor, and they give a lot of money to campaigns, primarily to Democrats. And so they have been against it, and it's causing a rift in Democrats on who are you going to side with, environmental advocates and climate change activists or labor unions.
Okay, let's go to another subject. State lawmakers take in, I'll put it this way, many dollars in gift bans. Right. And now there's an effort to change that, to limit that, that's moving in the state legislature.
Yes.
And you want to talk about the loopholes and the weaknesses as well as what it does, correct?
Right. So for years there have been calls for reform on this issue because elected officials in Pennsylvania can take any value of gift from anybody as long as they report it annually on their financial disclosure forms. This past week, a key House committee passed a bill that would ban lodging, hospitality, and entertainment from lobbyists to elected officials. But again, there's a really big loophole within that because there are other people, not just lobbyists, who provide those types of things to lawmakers and others. Also, there is another big loophole, which is these people can give unlimited campaign contributions to those same elected officials and still try and influence that way.
And it only got out of a committee.
Right.
The entire House has not voted on it, and then it has to go to the Senate.
Yes.
But out of the committee, it was bipartisan, meaning individuals from both parties supported it, correct?
That is correct. But once it gets to the Senate, it faces a very uncertain future because leaders there have not endorsed, or at least the Republican leaders have not endorsed a gift ban.
And I remind everybody that the state legislature is controlled by Republicans. We have a Democratic governor. Look, I want to thank you for coming on. These are very important subjects, and it's an excellent update. All right, coming up, we have Dave Taylor, who's president of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. We're going to talk about the economy and energy, and we'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, joining me now is Dave Taylor. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. We're going to talk about the economy and energy. All right, David, I'll tell you, the big news right now is inflation. It's about supplies. You go into grocery stores, they're the shelves are empty. What's your position, or let me put it this way, what's your sense about what's happening?
Well, I think the economy's in trouble, and I don't think that really can be questioned. That you see, as you noted, the rise in inflation. One of the things driving that is the rising cost of energy, and remembering that energy goes into every level of production, whether it's the manufacture of goods, whether it's the supply chain bringing those goods to the factory, whether it's the distribution network. Everything depends on energy. So as energy gets more expensive, it renders every single layer of production more expensive, which drives prices up.
Ask people who, go to get gasoline and look at the price of it per gallon, right? And
yeah, that's just one manifestation of that, but it's going to be also the case with electricity, with natural gas, with other energy inputs. And, you mentioned also the wrenching problems with national, international supply chains, that, the ports are jammed up, that we don't have enough.
Ships are waiting out, they can't unload them.
It's an absolute crisis, and I'm still sort of dismayed that the U.S. Department of Transportation hasn't done the work to get through this. This is a clear federal responsibility, but until and unless that get those we need that pig to go through the python. So it's going to take a while, and we'll see how much damage gets done to the economy in the meantime.
Yeah, I think everybody knows Pennsylvania, coal, iron, steel, now natural gas, but there's also the aspect of upgrading U.S. Steel and what that all means.
Yeah, so, Pennsylvania has an unreal opportunity, and I don't think people really appreciate the discovery and development of the Marcellus Shale natural gas play is world historic, and that's not rhetorical. It is transformational. That Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, on the New York State border, is the #1 natural gas producing county in America. Not Texas, not Louisiana, not Oklahoma.
County?
Well, in the western part of Pennsylvania, you have the natural gas, the methane, coming out of the earth with other elements, ethane, butane, pentane, propane, and natural gasoline. And so you've seen the development in southwestern Pennsylvania because of the opportunity with petrochemical manufacturing having those inputs. You've seen a great investment on the northern tier because up there the natural gas comes out of the ground as pure methane, ready to go in the pipeline for industrial furnaces, for home heating and cooking, and for electricity generation. We need to harness this to, again, to build a better future for Pennsylvania. This is something that's actually big enough that it could overcome the other areas where Pennsylvania is much less competitive with our cost of government, cost of taxes, the labor climate, all regulatory climate, all those things. So we need to commit to this. But unfortunately, we're in the face of radical environmentalists who literally want to keep it in the ground. And that this has been manifesting, I guess the most notable thing that people may have seen, you mentioned the proposed upgrade to the Mon Valley Works by U.S. Steel, that they had proposed a $1.5 billion upgrade to modernize that facility, including drilling a natural gas well on site to power the Clairton Coke Works, which would not only make that plant more efficient and more profitable, it would also reduce their emissions by half, making it more defensible to the regulators
How controversial has that become?
Well, it's dead. And it's dead because local green radicals successfully killed off a permit to build the pipeline from where the gas well was drilled to the Clairton Coke Works. And so as a result, U.S. Steel has withdrawn that plan, and that the $1 billion investment will go someplace else, almost certainly outside of Pennsylvania. That's 4 million man-hours that our skilled tradesmen and laborers out in Allegheny County in western Pennsylvania would have had to work, that they will now not get to work, will not get paid for. And it's a tragedy because, you know, again, you can reduce emissions by converting to natural gas, or you can reduce emissions the way that U.S. Steel is now doing it by shutting down batteries at the Clairton Coke Works and unemploying hundreds of steel workers.
In the last segment, we were the reporters were chatting about the fact that Josh Shapiro, who's running for governor, does not agree with Governor Wolf's climate change strategy, and he's taken, you know, a very different position on that. Is that because of the significance of it to the economy? Well,
I don't know. And the fact is that while the Attorney General has made a statement, he actually has a role to play in approving or disapproving RGGI. That the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, when the Department of Environmental Protection issues the regulations, the Attorney General has to sign off on them. So, you know, Attorney General Shapiro can say what he wants, but how he acts, that will determine the future of this scheme.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I know you want to talk additionally about the importance of domestic energy production, and we'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, before we go to domestic energy production, let's talk a little bit about RGGI. Why don't you explain that for our viewers? What is it? And why is it controversial?
Yeah, so the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is an interstate compact of other Mid-Atlantic and New England states that imposes a carbon tax on the production of electricity. And I mean, first of all, Terry, it's important to note every interstate compact to which Pennsylvania is a party, that membership in that compact was approved by the General Assembly. Governor Wolf is attempting to do this unilaterally through regulation, not only without the support of the General Assembly, actually over the opposition of the General Assembly. This carbon tax, if it were imposed, it would render uncompetitive Pennsylvania's coal-fired power generation. Now, keep in mind, these plants that we're talking about are in Armstrong, Indiana, and Cambria County, and that these plants have been upgraded and modernized, that the owners spent hundreds of millions of dollars to help them comply with the tighter Obama-era clean air standards. These plants are in compliance with DEP and EPA. There's nothing wrong with them. But if this carbon tax is put in place, it's going to annihilate these plants. You're going to unemploy multiple thousands of our skilled tradesmen and industrial union members. And you're going to raise the price of electricity. You're going to annihilate the tax base, because not only are these energy producers major employers, they're also major taxpayers in places like Homer City. Like, this is a cruelty, and that this is why you see an unprecedented coalition of business and organized labor fighting to say, look, if Pennsylvania is going to enter an interstate compact, the General Assembly needs to approve it. If a tax is going to be imposed, then the General Assembly needs to do that too. Like this, and you know, this is what Attorney General Shapiro has said, that he doesn't approve of what the governor is doing or how he's doing it. But whether he acts to stop it, that's the question.
Yeah, we talked about that in the last segment, and normally on most issues, I think the Attorney General and the Governor are fundamentally in agreement. I'm not saying on everything, but on many of the important issues. Correct?
That's my take.
All right. Well, let's turn to domestic energy production in general and its significance.
Yeah, I mean, this is why the economy is in trouble today, because the change in the federal administration, the previous administration was dedicated to maximizing domestic energy production. When President Biden came in, the first thing he did was to shut down the Keystone XL pipeline to bring Canadian crude into the U.S. And for folks who don't know, you need crude oil to make gasoline. So if your price at the pump is going up, that's because we don't have enough access to petroleum. The Biden administration has also worked against industry and energy production. That he pulled leases that had been sold in the for the North Slope in Alaska for energy exploration. He ended energy production on federal lands, and certainly with the things that are moving in Congress, all of that is poised to further depress energy production. And you know, what do you expect to have happen? You suppress energy production, prices go up because supply gets limited, and it puts us in the bizarre situation of having our president ask the OPEC powers to increase production in their countries to lower prices over here. Energy independence is critical not only to American prosperity, but also to American national security, so that we are in control of our own fate, and that's something that is very much.
And we export a lot of energy, correct?
We had reached a point in the very recent past, like last year, where we were finally not only energy independent, but also that we were expanding exports of energy. That's actually really important for Pennsylvania too, because the massive amount of natural gas that we have, trillions of cubic feet recoverable, that superabundance makes it possible for us to send liquefied natural gas to sell to our allies overseas, and not only to help the balance of trade, but also to help disentangle our allies from energy relationships with countries like Russia or the OPEC powers. And that when their energy relationship is more congruent with ours, their national security view becomes more congruent with ours. So this strengthens America on the world stage, and Joe Biden has given that all up for nothing.
Yeah, but I said earlier that on natural gas, he said he was for fracking.
Yeah, he said it. He said it, but the actions of his administration do not back that up.
Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on and expressing your point of view. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.